Hello, my name is John Schneider. When I was a kid, I used to visit my Grandma Vi in the Jersey Bayshore area, and I'd take 8mm movies of my family and their friends. In fact, I was the family filmmaker. Today I live here, but traded my film camera for video, and recently shot this tugboat in the Shrewsbury River. Welcome to Jersey Bayshore country. This is where you'll find Raritan Bay, the Atlantic Ocean, as well as Sandy Hook Bay. Where is the Jersey Bayshore? Let's get oriented by starting with the big picture. It's somewhere in here, part of the universe, and definitely part of our world. But it's like no place I've ever experienced. And as soon as we land, I'll show you around. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Jersey Bayshore Country. You know, a couple of years ago, I did a documentary on clamming in the Highlands area, in Raritan Bay, Sandy Hook Bay, and the Shrewsbury River. When I talk to clammers, or diggers as they prefer to be known, I may talk to them for an hour, and I may only use 5 minutes of the interview, but I want to go back to the clamming documentary I did, where I talked to Richie Gardner. And I listened to his interview the other night, and I thought, you know, you might find it interesting too. So here it is, in its entirety, unedited, my interview with digger Richie Gardner. All right, so what are we doing out here?
We're clamming. We're sitting here waiting for a drift to come so we can catch some clams.
And how do you catch clams? I mean, just people will see it and they'll probably hear your voice as you show them. But explain the whole process. You come out here and what do you do?
And you put the rake in the water. You put your handles together. You put the rake in the water, and you rake the clams up out of the mud.
And tell me, I mean, is it that simple? Can anybody do this? What does it take?
It takes a lot of perseverance, what it does take. And I guess anybody could do it, just you can't get a company to work for it right now.
Why?
Because there's so many clammers, and each plant only has so many baskets to be filled. So the guys that have been doing it get the baskets, and the guys that never did it aren't going to get any baskets.
You describe this as really tedious work, and I understand that you get paid for tedious work. But what are the redeeming qualities of clamming? What do you like about it?
Being myself, and like being my own boss, being self-sufficient. Being, not told what to do, when to go out, when to come back, when my coffee break is, when I got to eat lunch. It's freedom. Work on the water is basically kind of like freedom. I think we all have that desire for freedom. And you were talking about, I think it's really interesting, talk about some of the things you've pulled up in the rake. What are some things you pulled up in the rake? We catch two different kinds of snails. One we call it a drill snail. They kill the clams. They actually drill a little hole in the clam at the belly and they kill the clam. And the other one is conches, which is a marketable snail. And some guys commercially fish them. Other than that, we have one other kind of clam out here. They call them blood clams, and I'm not sure what the real name or definition of the clam is, but they're not marketable.
And what are some non-edible things you've pulled up in the rake that you can remember that you've got?
Beer cans, broken bottles, glass, wire, old fishing rods, you name it, it's out here.
Now, can you talk about that shell you found?
Years ago, yeah, I caught a live shell from Earl Pier when the ship exploded years ago, and had to have it removed from the boat by the Navy. But most of it has been caught up. A lot of hand grenades were caught over the years, and all that had to get turned back in, and they detonate that stuff. Yeah.
Talk to me about your boat. What do you got on it? How's it rigged? Did you build it? What kind of engine do you have in it, and that sort of thing?
Well, this, believe it or not, is a 1962 Pearson, and it was a cabin cruiser, and it's got a 318 Chrysler V8 engine and a gasoline motor. And this is the type of boat I prefer. Most clammers prefer the open boats with the outboard motors on them.
And what's the deal with this? As I've come out here, I've seen these sails up, these makeshift sails. What do they do?
Well, the boat has to move to catch clams. We can't just sit in one spot. So in order to get the boat to move, if there's a little breeze or a little wind, we can use the sail, helps the boat move just a little bit faster, especially on slow days like we're experiencing today.
And what about the rakes? They've got quite a length on them. What are the typical depths that you find clams? Every depth?
Basically, almost from the tide line on the beach to some guys do work in the Raritan Bay in 30 foot of water, and I'm sure there's clams deeper than that. You know, so I mean, they don't really stick to one certain depth. There's no real secret depth or anything. You can find them pretty much any place.
And talk to me a little bit about the I guess the old wives' tale that this water is polluted and the clams are polluted. Talk to me about that.
No, yeah, it was polluted in the older days because the sewage processing wasn't anywhere near what it is now. Also, the outfall pipes don't really pump the sewage into the water. Just a liquid goes in, which is 99.9% pure. The mayor of Asbury Park actually drank a glass of it on television to prove to people how pure the water was coming out of the sewer plant. And I believe during World War II, I don't know if it was DuPont or some manufacturer of gunpowders or whatever, or the armory up in Harrison, but they dumped a lot of heavy metals in the Raritan River and the upper bays. So some sections way up in there are still closed because there's a little bit of a heavy metal content. But other than that, the bay's clean, and that we have what we call the New Jersey Department of Water Monitoring. They come out and constantly check this bay, and it's clean, believe me, or else they wouldn't let us out here. It's clean. After Hurricane Sandy, they kept testing it and kept failing it. We couldn't go back to work until they said it was okay for us to go back to work. Once the fecal coliform count and whatever else they check for is to the bare minimum number that they allow, that's when they let us go back to work.
How many clammers or diggers are out here represented by the plant or certified clammer, the association? Generally in Highlands, how many clammers do you have?
We have quite a few clammers. A lot of them don't work every day. I think it's approximately 30 or 35 of us that work every day, 6 days a week, that are constant goers. You know.
And you've been in this business a relatively short time compared to some. Can you talk generally about some of the clammers and whether it's been something in their family they've done for generations? What are the clammers generally like, Richie?
Well, it might have been handed down over the generations a little bit, but a lot of them came from Staten Island, where what they had was they called it a relay system, and they would catch the clams, and they had the buyer would take them and put them out on Long Island where the water was pure, and they had to let them sit out there for 2 or 3 months pumping that water through them so that they would purify themselves. But the bays were shut in the 50s due to fecal coliform. So as far as, like you say, it being in somebody's heritage, they might have done it before the mid-50s, but then they stopped doing it until about 19 years ago, when we found a way to purify the clams in the tanks, to satisfy the state that the clam was purified enough to go on the market. And each load of clams that is caught after it's purified is checked by a biologist to make sure it meets food standard.
On a good day, how many baskets of clams could you bring home?
I usually try to do 6.
And what are some clammers, like what's some of the records that they've been able to bring home in a day?
It's not so much like whether they can dig that many or not. We're limited to 240 baskets have to be divided up among so many diggers. So if they leave the dock with 7, if some people don't fill all theirs, they go back in empty, we can put them back out in the water, the baskets, because they weren't filled. And they start what they call rotation by alphabetical order. And wherever they left off the day before, they start the next day. And a guy might get 8 or he might get 9. This time of year, to get more than your 7, because everybody likes to work in the summer, of course, because it's so nice, you're basically stuck with your 6 or 7 for the day. In the winter, most of the time we go down to about 14 of us that work year round, and it's almost not unlimited, but you could, if you could do it, you could do 10 or 15 baskets, but they're usually just bigger clams anyway.
At the end of the day, on a typical day, how many baskets or how many clams are brought to the plant for processing?
It depends on the time of the year. In the summer, because we catch a lot more of the small ones, there's a lot more small ones in a basket than there is big ones, of course. In the summer, we'll process, we've processed up to 175,000. Recent numbers I've seen 118,000 and 134,000, because there's some people that still catch a lot of the big ones. It's their choice to do so, and so of course their count of clams amount in the basket is a lot less than a guy that's keeping the smaller clams. The smaller clams, you get 500 clams in a basket, where a bigger clam you get 200 to 240 in a basket.
And tell me about please, about I guess not the accessibility, but the number of clams. I don't know, are they clam beds? Are we in danger of losing clams? Are there enough clams for everybody here? What?
Well, a lot of guys feel that over the years we're catching a lot of clams, and some people say that we think we're really taking a little too many. But the growth rate in Sandy Hook and the Raritan Bay is unequaled in the world, and the New Jersey DEP, they know that, and they come out and they survey the bay, I don't know how many years, every year or every couple of years, and they tow a dredge in the exact same spot for the exact same amount of time, and then they reel it up and count the clams, and they go to maybe 10 different spots in Sandy Hook and Raritan Bay, and then they take the count that they got that day, compare it to the count they got a year or two ago, and they see that the amount of clams they caught is still the same. So according to them, we're not overfishing the bay.
If you were going to talk me into becoming a clammer, what would you say? And then if you were going to talk me out of becoming a clammer, what would you say? What's good about being a clammer? What's not so good?
Well, first, no offense, but at your age, if you've never done it before, it's going to really hurt. And I do believe you give up, because it is hard work. There's no doubt about it. It's worse than digging ditches with a shovel, and they don't even do that anymore. They use a backhoe. But we still have to work with the old rake. We can't use anything modern. And to talk you into clamming, I wouldn't try to talk anybody into it, because it's just a laborious, ungodly job, and you don't have any like steady income. Your pay varies week to week. It can be good, it can be bad, it can be mediocre. In the winter we get a lot of time off where there's no pay, so any money that you do make in the summer, you got to try to hold it a little bit to get you through the winter. So working on the water, it's just like any other job on the water. Some fisheries are good in the winter, and then the guys have nothing to do in the summer, and vice versa. We do better in the summer because the clams are easier to market, and we catch the smaller ones. In the winter, we catch mostly big clams, so our paychecks go down severely. That's all there is to it.
Has anybody ever kind of figured out the amount of work that is done, like what a clammer's hourly wage is when you consider what you're paid for the clams and how much work you put into it? Can you characterize the pay for the effort?
No, not really. Some of the guys laugh because if I do my 6 baskets, and if I average 400 or 500 clams to the basket, say it's about a $45 basket, maybe 50 at the most. And say I came out and started working at 6 in the morning, and I was done at 12. What did I work? 6 hours, and so you would divide the amount of money up, and everybody say, well, you made $40 an hour. But then again, you can't put in an 8-hour day because you already filled your baskets and you're done. So you're really limited, that way.
Is it about? You think you get about $40-50 a basket, typically?
It depends on what size clams.
Yeah.
That basket of clam over there, if I keep going with what we're catching today, we're catching bigger ones, it's probably going to be about a $35 basket.
And what are you explain, you have to hold it because I'll show them later. What are the 4 types of clams that you're really catching here?
The sizes, you mean?
Yes.
There's the little necks. Little neck.
They're the smallest.
Smallest. Top neck, neck size up. Then there's a cherry stone. And there's a chowder, which I haven't seemed to catch one yet, which is the biggest clam.
And tell me about I know we'll talk about this later too, but what is the market like for clams these days? I mean, and also, are you guys? Does the price fluctuate in terms of how you're being paid?
Well, this year. The storm, the Hurricane Sandy hurt our sales a little bit because most seafood restaurants were right on the coast, and everything from Atlantic City to Montauk Point, New York, was devastated by Hurricane Sandy. So if there's less seafood restaurants, it's a little harder to get rid of a seafood product, so marketing this year was a little bit more difficult than it's ever been. It is. So, I hope that answers your question. You got out fairly early today, but tell me about tides and time, and is there an ideal time to go out, and what's the ideal weather, the ideal time to go out clamming? I just love getting up early in the morning, so I go out early. I've been getting up early for over 30 years now, and I can't break the habit. The only rule is can't start to sunrise, and all the boats have to be back to the clam dock by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's anybody's personal choice as to what time they can go out. I mean, we have fellows that don't even leave the dock till 11, 12 o'clock in the morning, but yet they're still back in by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's some people. Whether they do things in the morning or they just like to sleep late, I have no idea. Like I said, it's more of a personal choice than anything else, Yeah.
How does in terms of Highland as one center of clamming, and Long Island and Staten Island and that sort of thing, how do we fare in terms of production and in terms of capacity? How do we fare compared to the other clam producing centers in this area, this part of the country?
We were number 1 until they opened up. We were the number 1 producer on the East Coast, J.T. White, until they opened up Long Island Sound, and they opened it up to power dredging, so the men can go out and tow big clam dredges and probably triple what we catch. And there's no limit to baskets because those clams they catch can go right on the market. They don't have to go back to a company, and so. There's no deparation. There's no anything. All they do is go out, catch what they can catch, go home and sell them. And they're out producing us for the last it's 5 to 7 years now, I think, or so that they've been doing that.
So deparation is a bit of a handicap for us from a marketing.
Well, yeah, it's a financial handicap because to deparate the clam costs us money. So any cost that has to go toward the clam has to come out of the clammer's pay. See, every expense, even the electric bills are on the companies. We have 2 different companies. We got bills, we got truck payments. We've got refrigeration payments. We got payments for everything. And all that has to come out. All of that has to come out of the price per clam to the clammer.
And why are we handicapped with the need to deporate the clams? Why is that?
Because the state still insists that the bay is restricted waters. They don't want to call it condemned, polluted, or anything else. They call it special restricted waters. So until the state decides to open the waters and let us just take the clams in and sell them, it'll probably never change. Also, most of us feel it'd be a bad thing if they open this up to anybody can come out and dig clams. It'll be shoulder to shoulder clammers, and then you could probably really hurt the population of clams. Also, it would hurt the market for the clams, because you'd have one guy go to a place to sell clams, and another guy will come in behind him and undersell him. So the price of clams might even get worse and worse if you did something like that.
I don't think anybody understands what deporation is, and we have a deporation plant. What is deporation? I know we'll see this later, but what is deporation?
All they do is there's a Olympic-sized swimming pool, basically, that gets filled with river water once a day. And there's ultraviolet lights hang over top the water. That water is pumped into the tanks where the clams are, and the clam is a bivalve. All it does is pump water to get the nutrients out of the water. So now it's pumping ultraviolet water, which is pure water, through its system to purify any impurities that might be in it, which none of us feel there is anyway, but this is what the state has us do. They're in the tanks for 48 hours. They come out and go into a cooler. A lady comes and takes them, a biologist. She does her chemical analysis of a batch of the clams and gives us the okay to sell them out on the market because they're pure. And that's the deporation process.
Now, the clams you have today, you bring them in by 4 o'clock this afternoon. How soon, Richie, could one of the clams you caught today be served at a restaurant here locally?
There you go. 48. Well, let me think here. I'll take 48. I guess it would take almost 4 days. It would take almost 4 days because you got 24 hours or 48 hours in the tanks, a day for the lady to do the biology test, and then they get shipped over to our selling company, and they can go out on the market as soon as they go over there, basically. So I think it'd be approximately 4 days it takes.
Now, people in Highlands years ago used to just go out into the banks of the river and dig down and get clams, bring them home and cook them up. Is that still possible? Legally?
No, not legally.
Why? How can someone like me go get clams?
Because the state insists that the water's polluted. See, the state just keeps insisting that the water's polluted, and they don't want people doing that because they're afraid people will get fecal coliform poisoning. And a lot of us clamor laugh at it because we don't believe it, because most of us know people that happen to go down and do it. I actually had a friend of mine took his grandson down with his little beach basket, or little beach bucket, and dug 6 or 8 clams up and took them home and ate them. But about after the 3rd time they went to do it, they got caught by the game warden and got a ticket. So, like I said, it's just a controversy over whether the water's really polluted or not, and we don't feel it is. We really don't.
You've lived in Highlands. You worked in Highlands. You've been on the Sandy Hook Bay. What do you like about this area? Living in this area?
Well, basically because I was born and raised here, and I know so many people. I've been to Cape Cod. I've been to Florida. I've been almost all through New England along the coast, and I still prefer it here. It's a little bit more hustle and bustle here especially than like in Cape Cod. But you have better markets here for commercial fishing. Whereas Cape Cod, it can get real tricky, and even the east end of Long Island, it can get tough on, like lobster fishermen and stuff. After the summer season's over, the tourists are gone, and you're catching lobsters. They're hard to get rid of. I just like it here. I always have. I'll never leave here. I don't feel I'll ever leave here. Not this area.